Part 4, testing. Have to test all the stuff we put on the rocket. We have to test and make sure that it survives and it doesn't break. And this vibration table, it's basically a huge speaker with a plate attached to it. And the speaker can reproduce whatever we tell it to. And right here, we want to tell it, hey, you need to reproduce this much vibration at this frequency, this much vibration at this frequency. And so we strap the parts and the components onto a fixture onto this table. And then it just, and we give it this data, and then it just shakes it and recreates the dynamic environment that the component will see on the rocket. Haha, I scared you with that one, didn't I? And that is how we can test components and make sure that wherever they're attached on the rocket, they can survive. Because different components, like I said, they're going to see different dynamic environments at different parts of the rocket. Like down by the engine, a lot of happening. Maybe not the best part to be, but you kind of have to be there if you're a valve that's involved in propulsion stuff. Like there's no way around it. That's what your job is. You got to be down by the engine. And with avionics stuff, sometimes people are luckier because they can just be like, well, we'll just move the box around a little bit. We'll just move it to over here where it's not so shaky. And then we can just, you can just lay harnessing up to where it's actually being recorded or whatever. So yeah, so that's kind of what I do. We get the data, look at it, and we come up with those envelopes, and then we send them off to the vibration table. A lot of times you have to do a functional test to make sure it works. Then they shake it. Afterwards, they test it again. If it still works, you passed. If it doesn't work, damn it. Have to try to figure out what broke, why it broke. Was there a certain frequency that it broke at? How can we avoid that frequency? Do we have to move the component? Can we maybe add some mass to it to make it heavier? Don't do it. And can we isolate it? Isolating systems, that's a whole different story. You've seen this. What happens when rubber gets really warm versus when it gets really cold? If you're using an isolator to isolate your system on a rocket, if you're on the ground and it's really hot in West Texas where we're launching New Shepard, Florida even is pretty hot. Wherever rockets get launched is super hot. But then, you go up outside of the atmosphere, bam, it's super cold. And what happens? It's going to isolate at a different frequency at that point, because never forget, natural frequency is square root of K over M. If K goes up, your natural frequency is going to go up. And part 5, we've arrived at kind of the end. This is just going to be the takeaway. The takeaway of what I've talked about and all the implications. Or a part of the implications. Like I said, this is like the minimum of what I could talk about in this short amount of time. And part 5, we've arrived at kind of the end. During launch, after launch, having to relaunch. Oh, propellers and ships? I don't even want to get into that because they have to deal with like cavitation. It's such a huge problem, and people just don't understand what a big part this is of trying to make a rocket not freaking fall apart.